Most cat owners pour food into a bowl every day believing they're doing the right thing. The packaging looks healthy. There's a happy cat on the bag. Words like complete nutrition, real meat, and veterinarian approved are printed across the label. But here's the uncomfortable truth many vets quietly talk about. Some of the most recognizable cat food brands in America rely on ingredients that would shock most pet owners if they truly understood what was inside. And the problem isn't just about nutrition. Some of these foods are packed with cheap fillers, artificial additives, and low-quality animal byproducts that cats were never designed to eat in large amounts. Over time, those ingredients can contribute to issues like obesity, urinary problems, diabetes, and digestive troubles. Today, we're going to walk through 8 cat food brands veterinarians frequently warn owners about. Some of them are extremely popular and sold in almost every grocery store in the country. But popularity doesn't always mean quality. Later in the video, we'll also show you 2 brands that many vets and pet nutritionists actually recommend. And we'll explain how to spot better cat food yourself so you're not relying on marketing claims. Because once you understand what's really in your cat's bowl, choosing better food becomes a lot easier. Let's start with one of the most recognizable names in American pet food. Meow Mix has been a staple on grocery store shelves for decades. The brand is famous for its catchy commercials and colorful bags, and many cat owners grew up seeing it in their homes. It's affordable, easy to find, and marketed as a complete daily diet. But when you flip the bag over and actually read the ingredient list, things start to look very different. The first ingredient in many Meow Mix dry formulas isn't meat at all. Instead, it's ground corn, or corn gluten meal, which is essentially a plant-based protein source, used to bulk up the food cheaply. Cats are obligate carnivores, meaning their bodies are built to rely heavily on animal protein. While small amounts of plant ingredients can appear in cat food, a formula built primarily around corn isn't ideal for their natural diet. Another common ingredient in Meow Mix products is animal byproduct meal. Now, byproducts themselves aren't automatically bad, but the issue is transparency. When a label simply says, animal byproduct meal, it doesn't tell you exactly which animals were used or which parts of the animal were included. That lack of clarity makes many veterinarians uncomfortable. Some formulas also include artificial colors like red 40 or yellow 5, which serve no nutritional purpose whatsoever. They're only there to make the kibble look appealing to humans, even though cats couldn't care less what color their food is. Over time, diets high in inexpensive grains and fillers can contribute to weight gain and blood sugar fluctuations in cats, especially indoor cats who already live less active lives. That's why many vets suggest owners look for foods where real animal protein appears clearly as the first ingredient, rather than corn-based fillers. And unfortunately, Meow Mix isn't the only well-known brand that relies heavily on those types of ingredients. If you've ever walked down the cat food aisle in a supermarket, you've seen Friskies. The brand is everywhere, offering dozens of flavors, textures, and varieties of wet and dry food. For many cat owners, it feels like a safe and familiar choice. But Friskies has also faced criticism for some of its ingredient choices. One issue often raised by veterinarians is the frequent use of meat byproducts without specific sourcing. Instead of listing something like chicken liver or turkey heart, labels may simply say meat byproducts, which leaves the exact source unclear. There's also the presence of cereal grains and fillers in several formulas. While cats can digest certain grains in small amounts, they don't require them nutritionally. When grains dominate the ingredient list, it usually means the manufacturer is keeping costs low. Some Friskies wet foods also contain added artificial flavors, which are used to enhance palatability. Cats tend to prefer strong smells and tastes, and artificial flavoring can encourage them to eat more. But again, it's an additive that doesn't contribute any real nutritional value. To be fair, Friskies does meet basic nutritional standards established by the Association of American Feed Control Officials, which means it can legally be sold as complete cat food. But meeting minimum standards and offering optimal nutrition are two very different things. Veterinarians often remind owners that cats evolved as desert hunters, eating small prey animals. Their natural diet is rich in animal protein and moisture, not cereals and flavor additives. And speaking of cereals, the next brand on our list leans heavily on them. 9 Lives is another long-standing name in the cat food world, recognizable by its cartoon mascot, Morris the cat. The brand markets itself as affordable nutrition with a wide range of flavors designed to satisfy picky eaters. But affordability often comes with trade-offs. In many 9 Lives dry formulas, the ingredient list again begins with ground corn, soybean meal, or wheat, rather than identifiable meat sources. These plant-based ingredients are significantly cheaper than high-quality animal proteins, which helps keep the retail price low. The concern veterinarians raise is that cats have limited ability to process large quantities of plant protein. Their digestive systems evolved to process meat, organs, and animal fats. Another ingredient sometimes present in lower-cost formulas is BHA, a synthetic preservative used to extend shelf life. While the FDA allows its use in pet food within regulated limits, some animal nutrition experts prefer foods preserved with natural alternatives like mixed tocopherols, which are derived from vitamin E. There's also the issue of carbohydrate load. Many inexpensive kibbles contain high levels of carbohydrates because grains and starches are required to create the crunchy texture. But cats have minimal dietary need for carbohydrates, and excessive amounts can contribute to weight gain or metabolic issues. Again, this doesn't mean every cat eating 9 Lives will become unhealthy overnight. Many cats have lived long lives on grocery store foods, but veterinarians increasingly recommend formulas that prioritize species-appropriate nutrition, meaning diets built around animal protein rather than grain fillers. And the next brand is often criticized for exactly the same reason. Kit and Caboodle is instantly recognizable because of its brightly colored kibble pieces. The food often contains red, yellow, green, and orange shapes designed to look visually exciting in the bowl. But those colors are created using artificial dyes, the same type of additives used in processed human snacks. They're added solely for marketing purposes because humans perceive colorful food as more appealing. Cats, however, have extremely limited color vision and don't care about visual presentation. What matters to them is smell and taste. In addition to artificial dyes, Kit and Caboodle formulas often include cornmeal, soybean meal, and wheat middlings high on the ingredient list. These ingredients provide bulk and protein numbers on paper, but don't offer the same biological value as real meat. Another issue raised by nutritionists is the presence of multiple carbohydrate sources stacked together in the ingredient list. When several grain ingredients appear near the top of a label, it suggests the formula relies heavily on plant-based calories. Over time, diets high in carbohydrates may increase the risk of obesity or diabetes in cats, especially when combined with low moisture intake. And moisture is another critical factor in feline health. Unlike dogs, cats evolved in desert environments and naturally obtain most of their water from food. When cats eat exclusively dry kibble, they may not drink enough water to compensate. This can contribute to urinary tract issues in some cats. That's why many veterinarians encourage owners to incorporate wet food or high moisture diets whenever possible. But even among wet foods, quality varies widely. Fancy Feast has long been marketed as a premium option compared to typical grocery store brands. The packaging looks elegant, the portion sizes are convenient, and the flavors often sound gourmet. Some varieties of Fancy Feast are actually better than others, but veterinarians still advise owners to read the ingredient list carefully. Certain formulas contain meat byproducts as the primary protein source, which again raises questions about ingredient transparency. In addition, some recipes include wheat gluten or soy protein, plant-based proteins used to boost overall protein percentages on the label. Another point of concern is the use of thickening agents like carrageenan in some wet food formulas. Carrageenan is derived from seaweed and used to create the smooth texture many canned foods have. While regulatory agencies consider food-grade carrageenan safe, some research has explored potential links between degraded forms of carrageenan and digestive inflammation. Because of that uncertainty, many pet nutritionists prefer foods that avoid the ingredient entirely. Fancy Feast also illustrates a larger problem in the pet food industry: branding versus formulation. Just because a product is marketed as premium doesn't always mean the ingredients match that image. And if you're wondering how to tell the difference between clever marketing and genuinely better nutrition, that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. But before we get into how to identify higher quality cat food, there are still several well-known brands veterinarians often caution owners about. Whiskas is another name many cat owners recognize immediately. It's been around for decades, and for a lot of people it feels familiar and trustworthy simply because they've seen it for so long. The brand markets its products as flavorful meals designed to satisfy a cat's instincts, often highlighting chicken, salmon, or tuna on the packaging. But when veterinarians and pet nutritionists evaluate food, they're not looking at the front of the can. They're looking at the ingredient panel. Many Whiskas formulas rely heavily on meat byproducts and unnamed animal ingredients, similar to some of the brands we already discussed. Again, the problem here isn't necessarily that byproducts exist, but the lack of clarity about their origin. When a label doesn't clearly identify the animal source, it becomes harder to evaluate the overall quality of the protein. Another issue that appears in some Whiskas dry formulas is the use of corn and wheat as major ingredients, sometimes appearing before identifiable meat sources. This shifts the nutritional profile away from the kind of high animal protein diet cats evolved to eat. There have also been discussions among veterinarians about the high ash content in certain lower-cost cat foods. Ash refers to the mineral content remaining after food is burned during analysis. While minerals are essential in small amounts, excessive levels have historically been associated with urinary tract concerns in cats. Modern research has shown the issue is more complex than simply ash levels alone, but many vets still prefer foods where mineral balance is carefully controlled. So when owners ask veterinarians what to watch for, the advice is often simple. Look for foods where the first ingredient clearly states a specific animal protein, like chicken, turkey, or salmon. And unfortunately, not every brand prioritizes that level of ingredient transparency. If you've ever shopped for pet food at Walmart, you've probably seen Special Kitty. It's one of the most affordable cat food options in the United States, which makes it appealing for multi-cat households or owners on tight budgets. But affordability often comes from cutting costs in formulation. Many Special Kitty dry foods contain large amounts of corn, soybean meal, and wheat middlings, which are used to provide inexpensive calories and protein numbers on the nutrition label. These ingredients are commonly used across the pet food industry. But when they dominate the formula, it can shift the nutritional balance away from animal-based protein. Another ingredient sometimes found in these formulas is animal fat preserved with BHA or BHT, synthetic preservatives used to prevent fats from spoiling. While these preservatives are allowed in regulated amounts, some nutritionists prefer foods that rely on natural preservation methods like mixed tocopherols. The bigger concern with extremely low-cost foods is that the ingredient sourcing can be less consistent. Premium brands often invest more in ingredient traceability and quality control, which adds cost but also increases transparency. Veterinarians understand that not every owner can afford premium boutique foods, but many still recommend looking for formulas that prioritize meat as the main ingredient and minimize unnecessary additives whenever possible. And speaking of brands that often appear in budget-friendly aisles, the next one is another name most cat owners know well. IAMS occupies an interesting place in the cat food market. It's often marketed as a more science-backed brand, and the company has historically invested in research around pet nutrition. Some of their formulas are actually fairly balanced. However, certain IAMS products have still drawn criticism from veterinarians and nutrition advocates, because of ingredient choices and carbohydrate levels. Some formulas rely heavily on corn grits and other grain-based ingredients to provide structure and energy in dry kibble. While cats can digest carbohydrates, they don't require large amounts of them in their diet. High-carb diets may contribute to weight gain in indoor cats who already live relatively sedentary lives. Another factor veterinarians often discuss with owners is protein quality versus protein percentage. A food label may show a high protein percentage, but if much of that protein comes from plant sources rather than animal tissue, the biological value for a carnivore like a cat is lower. This is why ingredient sourcing matters so much. Cats evolved to hunt and consume small animals. Their bodies are adapted to diets rich in animal muscle meat, organs, and fat, not heavily processed grains. And once you understand that basic principle, reading a cat food label becomes much easier. So before we reveal the two brands many veterinarians feel more comfortable recommending, let's talk about how you can evaluate cat food yourself without relying purely on marketing claims. One of the biggest mistakes cat owners make is assuming the front of the packaging tells the whole story. Words like natural, premium, or gourmet are marketing terms. They're designed to attract attention, not necessarily to reflect ingredient quality. The real information is always on the back. The ingredient list is ordered by weight, meaning the first few ingredients make up the majority of the food. Ideally, you want to see clearly named animal proteins at the top. Ingredients like chicken, turkey, salmon, or beef indicate that the formula relies on animal-based nutrition. If the first ingredients are things like cornmeal, wheat flour, or soybean meal, that usually means the formula is built around inexpensive plant fillers. Another thing to watch for is vague ingredient labeling. Phrases like meat byproducts or animal digest don't tell you exactly what animals were used. More transparent brands often list specific sources like chicken liver or turkey meal. Moisture content is another important factor. Cats naturally get most of their water from their food, which is why many veterinarians encourage incorporating wet food or high-moisture diets. Cats eating only dry kibble may not drink enough water to compensate, which can increase the risk of urinary tract problems. Finally, pay attention to artificial additives. Artificial dyes, flavor enhancers, and unnecessary preservatives are often included purely for marketing or shelf life, not for the cat's health. When you start reading labels with those points in mind, you'll quickly notice that some brands prioritize ingredient transparency and quality far more than others. And that brings us to two brands that many veterinarians and pet nutrition experts tend to view more positively. Tiki Cat has gained a strong reputation among pet nutritionists because of its focus on high-protein, low-carbohydrate recipes that mimic a cat's natural diet. Many of their formulas feature real shredded meats or fish as the primary ingredient, often with minimal fillers. When you open a can of Tiki Cat, the contents actually look like recognizable pieces of chicken or seafood, rather than a heavily processed paste. Another reason veterinarians often appreciate this brand is its high moisture content, which supports hydration and urinary health in cats. Since many domestic cats don't naturally drink enough water, moisture-rich food can play an important role in overall wellness. Tiki Cat recipes also tend to avoid unnecessary additives like artificial colors and flavor enhancers. Instead, the formulas focus on animal proteins and simple ingredient lists. Of course, no food is perfect for every single cat. Some cats have allergies, sensitivities, or unique dietary needs. But brands that prioritize ingredient transparency and species-appropriate nutrition are often viewed more favorably by veterinary professionals. And there's one more brand that frequently appears on lists of higher quality options. Weruva is another company that has built its reputation around ingredient transparency and high-protein recipes. Many of their canned foods feature human-grade meat cuts like chicken breast or tuna, combined with broth to create a moisture-rich meal. When owners open a can, they often notice the food looks far closer to real shredded meat than the typical processed texture found in many grocery store brands. The company also avoids several ingredients that some pet owners prefer to minimize, such as artificial dyes and unnecessary fillers. Instead, the focus is on simple formulations built around animal protein. Weruva foods also tend to have lower carbohydrate levels compared to many dry kibbles, which aligns more closely with the nutritional profile cats evolved to eat in the wild. Again, that doesn't mean every cat must eat boutique brands to stay healthy. Some cats do perfectly fine on mid-range foods. But when veterinarians discuss higher quality options, brands that emphasize meat-first ingredients, moisture, and transparency tend to stand out. At the end of the day, the goal isn't to scare cat owners or shame anyone for what they've been feeding their pets. Most people simply trust the brands they grew up seeing. But once you understand how cat food is made and how to read ingredient labels, you realize that some foods are designed primarily around cost efficiency, while others are designed around nutritional quality. And when it comes to a creature that depends entirely on you for every meal it eats, that difference matters more than many people realize. The good news is that with just a little label reading and ingredient awareness, you can make far better choices for your cat's long-term health. And if you want to see another breakdown like this, the next video is already waiting on your screen. Thanks for watching.